The courtroom smelled like old wood and stale coffee. I had been in this room 100 times, representing clients, fighting for their futures, watching them crumble or triumph. But today, I was on the other side of the table. Today, I was the one whose future was being decided. I sat at the petitioner's table, my hands folded in front of me. My suit was navy blue. My hair was pulled back. My face was calm. I had spent 14 years learning how to look calm when everything inside me was screaming. I was good at it. Too good, maybe. Across the room, my husband was laughing. Mark, 48 years old, successful IT manager, perfect smile, perfect posture, perfect suit. He was sitting at the respondent's table with his lawyer, a man named Richard who had a reputation for being aggressive and ruthless. Mark was leaning back in his chair, his arms crossed, a smirk on his face. He was mocking me. I couldn't hear what he was saying. The courtroom was too loud. The murmur of other cases, the shuffling of papers, the distant sound of a judge's gavel. But I could see his lips moving. I could see the way he looked at me. Like I was a joke. Like I was nothing. I felt my hands tighten into fists under the table. I forced them to relax. I forced my breathing to stay steady. I had spent 8 years married to this man. 8 years of walking on eggshells. 8 years of being told I was too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic. 8 years of being gaslit until I couldn't trust my own memory. But I had started documenting everything 4 years ago. The first time he threw a glass at the wall. The first time he called me a useless bitch. The first time he told me he would destroy me if I ever tried to leave him. I had a folder on my phone called Mark. It was full of screenshots, recordings, photos, dates, times, everything. Every moment of cruelty, every threat, every manipulation. And I had a letter. A letter I had written 3 months ago, sitting alone in my study, crying so hard I could barely hold the pen. A letter where I poured out everything. Every moment of fear. Every moment of shame. Every moment I had stayed silent because I was too afraid to leave. I had sealed it in an envelope and hand-delivered it to the judge's chambers 3 days ago. Mark didn't know about the letter. He didn't know about the folder. He didn't know anything. He thought I was just another weak woman he could steamroll. He thought he had already won. All rise. The bailiff's voice echoed through the courtroom. Everyone stood. The judge walked in. A woman in her late 50s. Gray hair. Sharp eyes. The kind of judge who had seen everything and was bored by most of it. Her name was Judge Margaret Holloway. She had been on the bench for 22 years. She was known for being fair, tough, and completely unimpressed by theatrics. She sat down. She adjusted her glasses. She looked at the papers in front of her. Case number 4872. Miller versus Miller. Petition for dissolution of marriage. We are here for the final hearing. Mark's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, the respondent is prepared to proceed. We have a proposed settlement agreement that we believe is fair and equitable. I looked at Mark. He was still smirking. He was so confident, so sure of himself. He thought he was going to walk out of here with half of everything I owned. My house, my savings, everything I had built before I even met him. I had bought the house when I was 28. A beautiful 2-story brick home with a garden and a porch. I had painted every room myself. I had planted every flower. It was mine. Completely mine. Paid for with my own money. Mark had moved in 3 months after we got married. He had never paid a single mortgage payment. He had never fixed a single broken pipe. He had never even mowed the lawn. But now he wanted half of it. He wanted half of everything. And he had convinced himself that he deserved it. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Miller, do you have a response to the proposed settlement? I stood up. My voice was steady. Yes, Your Honor. I do. Mark's lawyer laughed. Your Honor, my client and I have already discussed this at length. The settlement is more than generous. Mrs. Miller is simply being unreasonable. The judge didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on me. Mrs. Miller, please proceed. I walked to the front of the courtroom. I placed a folder on the table. I turned to face the judge. Your Honor, before we proceed, I would like to draw your attention to a letter I submitted to your chambers 3 days ago. I asked that it be read during these proceedings. The courtroom went silent. Mark's smirk faded. He leaned forward, his brow furrowed. His lawyer was whispering frantically in his ear. The judge nodded. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. She opened it. She pulled out the letter and began to read. The first paragraph was about the day I met him. The day I thought I had found my soulmate. The day I had no idea I was walking into a trap. The second paragraph was about the first time he made me feel small. The first time he told me I was worthless. The first time I cried alone in the bathroom while he watched television in the living room. The third paragraph was about the money. The way he had slowly bled me dry. The way he had taken my savings without asking. The way he had told me I was selfish for wanting to keep my own money. The fourth paragraph was about the fear. The constant walking on eggshells. The constant waiting for the next explosion. The constant wondering when he would finally snap. The fifth paragraph was about the scar on my arm. The one I told everyone was from a kitchen accident. It wasn't a kitchen accident. It was from a glass he threw at me when I asked him where he had been all night. The sixth paragraph was about the day I finally decided to leave. The day I realized I would rather die alone than spend another minute with him. The judge read the entire letter. Every word. Every sentence. Every painful detail. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. Mark was pale. His hands were shaking. His lawyer was staring at the table. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Miller, is everything in this letter accurate? Yes, Your Honor. She looked at Mark. Mr. Miller, do you have anything to say? Mark opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Your Honor, that letter it's exaggerated. She's trying to make me look bad. She's always been dramatic. The judge didn't react. She just looked at him with cold, flat eyes. Mr. Miller, I have been on this bench for 22 years. I have read hundreds of letters like this one. Some are exaggerations. Some are outright lies. This one is neither. She turned to me. Mrs. Miller, you have my full attention. Please continue. The judge's eyes were still on me. Sharp. Curious. Waiting. I walked back to my table. I opened the folder I had brought. I pulled out the first piece of evidence. Your Honor, I said. I would like to submit Exhibit A, bank statements from the past 4 years. They show that my husband withdrew over $60,000 from our joint account without my knowledge or consent. These withdrawals were made without my signature. Without my knowledge. He used the money to pay off debts I didn't know he had. Debts from his previous marriage. Debts he told me were resolved before we got married. Mark's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client has every right to access joint funds. There was no fraud. No deception. It was a joint account. I looked at him. The account was joint in name only. The money in it was from my salary. My husband contributed less than $5,000 over the entire 4-year period. I pulled out another page. Exhibit B. My pay stubs and deposit records. They show that I was the sole contributor to that account. My husband's direct deposits went into a separate account he kept hidden from me. Mark shifted in his seat. His face was pale. His hands were gripping the table. Exhibit C, I continued. Copies of text messages where my husband admits he has been hiding assets from me. In one message, he says, she doesn't need to know where the money is. She'll just spend it anyway. I looked at Mark. That message was sent 2 days before our anniversary. I had been planning a surprise dinner. He had been planning to empty our joint account. The judge looked at the messages. She was reading them carefully. Her face was expressionless. But I could see her jaw tightening. Just slightly. Exhibit D, I said. Bank statements showing my husband's hidden account. It currently holds $47,000. Money he transferred from our joint account over the past 18 months. Money he told me was lost in bad investments. Mark's lawyer was on his feet again. Your Honor, my client was simply trying to protect his assets. Given the circumstances of this marriage, it was a reasonable precaution. The judge looked at him. Are you suggesting your client was justified in hiding marital assets from his wife? I'm suggesting, Your Honor, that my client had reason to believe his wife would not use the funds responsibly. On what basis? Mark's lawyer hesitated. On the basis of emotional instability, my client has expressed concerns about Mrs. Miller's mental health. I laughed. I couldn't help it. A short, sharp, incredulous laugh. Your Honor, I said. My husband has been telling people I'm unstable for years. It's his favorite excuse. Every time I confronted him about his lies, he told me I was too emotional. Every time I asked him to account for missing money, he told me I was paranoid. Every time I cried, he told me I was manipulating him with tears. I pulled out my phone. Your Honor, I would like to submit Exhibit E, audio recordings of my husband's verbal abuse. Mark's eyes went wide. That's not, you can't. I pressed play. His voice filled the courtroom. Loud. Angry. Ugly. You're so goddamn emotional. You know that? It's like living with a child. I can't even have a conversation with you without you crying. That's why I hide things from you. That's why I don't tell you anything. Because you can't handle the truth. You're a liability. You've always been a liability. The recording continued. His voice, cold and dismissive. My voice, barely a whisper. Mark, please. I just need to understand. Her voice, sharp and cruel. You don't need to understand anything. You just need to do what I say. That's your job. That's all you're good for. You're a lawyer, but you can't even manage your own marriage. How pathetic is that? I stopped the recording. The courtroom was silent. Mark's face was completely white. His hands were shaking. His lawyer was staring at the table. The judge looked at Mark. Mr. Miller, do you have anything to say? He opened his mouth. No sound came out. He looked like a man who had just been slapped by an invisible hand. Mr. Miller, I asked you a question. Mark swallowed. Your Honor, that was a private conversation. She recorded me without my consent. That's illegal. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, in our state, recording is legal as long as one party consents. I was the consenting party. Every recording I made was within the bounds of the law. The judge nodded slowly. I'm aware of the law, Mrs. Miller. She looked at Mark. Mr. Miller, I'm going to ask you a direct question. And I want you to answer truthfully. Did you make those statements? He looked at his lawyer. His lawyer was whispering something in his ear. Mark shook his head. I don't remember. That was a long time ago. I was stressed. I was tired. I didn't mean. Did you or did you not say those words? Mark was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Yes, I said it. But it was taken out of context. She made me angry. She pushed my buttons. She's been doing that for years. The judge looked at him with cold, empty eyes. Mr. Miller, I'm going to say something to you. I don't say this often, but I think you need to hear it. Mark stared at her. People like you, the judge said slowly, are the reason family court is full of broken people. You think you're smarter than everyone else. You think you can lie and cheat and manipulate and get away with it. You think everyone else is the problem. You think you're the victim. She leaned forward. But you're not the victim, Mr. Miller. You're the perpetrator. And the evidence in this case is overwhelming. Mark's face was red now. His jaw was tight. His fists were clenched. He looked like a man who was about to explode. This isn't fair, he said. She's been planning this for months. She's been manipulating the system. She's been. Mr. Miller, the judge interrupted. If I were you, I would be very careful about what you say next. He shut his mouth. But his eyes were still burning. Still angry. Still defiant. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Miller, I want you to know something. I've been on this bench for 22 years. I've read thousands of divorce cases. I've seen abuse in many forms. But I can't remember the last time I saw evidence as thorough and as damning as what you've presented today. She paused. I haven't finished reading your letter yet. But what I've read so far has been deeply troubling. I nodded. I felt the tears coming. I blinked them back. I want to continue reading, she said. And I want you to be prepared for what I find. The judge looked down at the letter in her hands. Her eyes moved across the page. The courtroom was completely silent. Even the murmur from the hallway had faded. Everyone was waiting, watching, listening. Judge Holloway cleared her throat. She adjusted her glasses. She began to read again. I want to describe something that happened on December 15th, 2 years ago. It was a Tuesday. I had just come home from work. I was tired. It had been a long day. I had represented a client in a custody battle, and I was emotionally drained. Mark was in the living room when I walked in. He was drinking. He had been drinking for hours. I could smell it from the door. He asked me where I had been. I told him I had been at work. He didn't believe me. He said I was lying. He said I was probably cheating on him. I told him he was being ridiculous. That's when he stood up. He walked toward me. His face was red. His fists were clenched. He was screaming. I can't remember all the words, but I remember the fear. I remember backing away. I remember my hand reaching for the door. The judge paused. She looked at me. Her eyes were softer now, almost kind. Mrs. Miller, do you want to continue? Or would you prefer that I read this privately? I shook my head. Please continue, Your Honor. Everyone needs to hear this. Mark was staring at the table. His face was gray. His hands were gripping the edge so hard his knuckles had turned white. His lawyer was whispering frantically in his ear, but Mark wasn't listening. The judge continued. He threw something at me. A glass. I don't know where he got it. I don't know if it was on the table or in his hand. But I remember the sound. The shattering. The pain. It hit my arm. I fell. I was bleeding. I looked down and saw the blood. I looked at him. He was standing over me. He was breathing hard. He was shaking. And then he walked away. He went into the kitchen and poured himself another drink. He didn't call an ambulance. He didn't help me. He didn't even look at me. I got up on my own. I bandaged my own arm. I drove myself to the emergency room. I told the doctor I had tripped and fallen on a broken glass. I lied because I was ashamed. I lied because I thought it would be worse if I told the truth. I lied because I thought I deserved it. The judge stopped. She looked at Mark. Her expression was cold, unforgiving. Mr. Miller, do you deny this? Mark didn't answer. His mouth was open. His face was pale. He looked like a man who had just realized he was trapped. Mr. Miller, the judge repeated. Do you deny this? Mark's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client is asserting his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. The judge laughed. It was a cold, humorless laugh. This isn't a criminal trial, Mr. Richardson. This is a divorce hearing. Your client has no Fifth Amendment rights here. He can either answer the question or face the consequences. Mark looked at his lawyer. Then he looked at me. His eyes were filled with hatred. Pure, burning hatred. She's lying, he said. All of it. She's making it up. She's been making things up for years. Mr. Miller, the judge said. I have a letter that was written 3 months ago. I have bank statements. I have audio recordings. I have medical records that document the scar on your wife's arm. I have a pattern of behavior that is consistent and undeniable. She leaned forward. You are going to sit there and listen while I read the rest of this letter. And when I'm done, you are going to have a very difficult conversation with yourself about who you really are. Mark's face was red. His jaw was tight. His hands were shaking. He looked like he was about to explode. Your Honor, he said through gritted teeth. This is not fair. This is not justice. She's playing the victim because she knows she's losing. Mr. Miller, the judge said calmly. I would advise you to remain silent. But he couldn't. The anger was too strong. The mask had finally slipped. You're all the same, he shouted. He stood up. His chair scraped against the floor. All of you. You think women are always the victims. You think men are always the villains. But you have no idea what I've been through. You have no idea how she's been manipulating me for years. His lawyer grabbed his arm. Mark, sit down. I won't sit down. I'm not going to sit here and listen to her lies. She's a snake. She's always been a snake. She ruined my life. The judge slammed her gavel. The sound echoed through the courtroom. Mr. Miller, sit down now or I will have you removed. Mark didn't sit. He stood there, breathing hard, his fists clenched, his eyes wild. He was shaking. His face was contorted with rage. He looked like a man who had lost control of everything. Mark, I said quietly. Sit down. You're only making it worse. He turned to look at me. His eyes were like fire. Don't you tell me what to do. Don't you? Sit down, the judge said again. Her voice was steel. Sit down or I will hold you in contempt. Mark's lawyer pulled him back into his chair. He sat there, staring at the table, his hands clenched into fists. His face was purple with rage. He was barely containing himself. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Miller, I want to read the final paragraph of your letter. And then I want to ask you a question. I nodded. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. The judge looked down at the letter. She read the final paragraph aloud. I never thought I would be one of those women. The ones who stay. The ones who make excuses. The ones who believe the lies. But I was. I stayed for years. I made excuses for him. I believed his lies. I told myself it would get better. I told myself he would change. I told myself I was the problem. And then one day, I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. She was broken. She was exhausted. She was empty. And I realized that if I didn't leave, I would die. Not a physical death. Something worse. A death of the soul. A death of everything I used to be. So I left. I walked out the door. I didn't look back. And now I'm standing here in this courtroom, telling the truth for the first time in 8 years. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for anything except the freedom to finally be myself again. The judge finished reading. She looked at me. Her eyes were full of something I hadn't expected. Respect. Mrs. Miller, she said. I have one question for you. Yes, Your Honor. Why did you stay so long? I thought about it. I thought about all the years. All the nights. All the tears. All the times I had told myself it would get better. Because I believed in him, I said quietly. I believed that the man I married was still in there somewhere. I believed that if I loved him enough, he would change. I believed that I could fix him. I paused. But you can't fix people who don't want to be fixed. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. All you can do is save yourself. The judge nodded slowly. She looked at Mark. He was still staring at the table. His face was a mask of defeat. Mr. Miller, she said. I'm going to make a ruling in this case. And I want you to listen very carefully. Judge Holloway took a moment to look at the papers in front of her. She adjusted her glasses. She sighed. It was a heavy sigh, the kind that came from someone who had seen too much pain and was tired of it. Mr. Miller, she said. I've reviewed all the evidence presented in this case. The bank statements. The audio recordings. The text messages. The medical records. And the letter Mrs. Miller submitted 3 days ago. Mark was sitting rigidly in his chair. His face was pale. His hands were gripping the edge of the table. His lawyer was whispering something to him, but Mark wasn't listening. Based on the overwhelming evidence of financial misconduct, emotional abuse, and physical endangerment, the judge continued, I am making the following ruling. She looked at me. Her eyes were steady. Mrs. Miller, you're awarded full ownership of the marital home. The property is to remain solely in your name. Mr. Miller has no claim to it. I nodded. I kept my face calm. But inside, I felt a surge of relief so powerful it almost made me dizzy. My house. My garden. My kitchen. The place I had painted and planted and loved. It was mine. Finally, completely, undeniably mine. Furthermore, the judge continued, Mrs. Miller, you are awarded sole ownership of all personal savings and retirement accounts. Mr. Miller has no claim to any of these funds. In addition, Mr. Miller is ordered to repay the $60,000 he withdrew from the joint account without Mrs. Miller's knowledge or consent. Repayment is to be made in full within 90 days. Mark's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client is not in a position to. Mr. Richardson, the judge interrupted. I'm not finished. His lawyer sat down. Mark was shaking. His face was red. His fists were clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. The judge looked at Mark directly. Mr. Miller, I've also reviewed the audio recordings of your behavior toward your wife. I've read the letter she submitted. I've seen the medical records of her injuries. In my 22 years on this bench, I have seen many cases of marital misconduct. But I have rarely seen such a consistent pattern of cruelty. Mark's jaw was tight. His eyes were burning. I am also ordering, the judge said, that Mr. Miller pay $15,000 in legal fees to Mrs. Miller to cover the cost of these proceedings. And I am ordering that Mr. Miller have no contact with Mrs. Miller for a period of 2 years, except as required for the finalization of this divorce. Mark exploded. No. He slammed his hands on the table. No. You can't do this. This is ridiculous. She's lying. She's manipulated all of you. Mr. Miller, the judge said sharply. Sit down. I won't sit down. You're ruining my life. You're taking everything from me. She's the one who... Mr. Miller, the judge said. Her voice was cold. If you say one more word, I will hold you in contempt of court. Do you understand? Mark's lawyer was on his feet, grabbing his arm. Mark, sit down. Please. Mark shook him off. I don't care. I don't care what you do. This isn't fair. None of this is fair. He turned to me. His eyes were wild. His face was twisted with rage. You did this, he said. You planned this. You set me up. You've been planning this for years, haven't you? You wanted to destroy me. I looked at him. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I didn't destroy you, Mark, I said calmly. You destroyed yourself. I just provided the evidence. He lunged forward. 2 bailiffs were on him in an instant. They grabbed his arms and pulled him back. He was shouting, cursing, struggling against their grip. Get off me. Let go. She's the one who should be in jail. She's the one who... The bailiffs dragged him out of the courtroom. His shouts echoed down the hallway. Then the doors swung shut and everything was silent. Judge Holloway looked at me. Her face was tired, but her eyes were kind. Mrs. Miller, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I shook my head. I'm not. I needed to see it. I needed to see who he really is. You've been through a lot. Yes, Your Honor. I have. She smiled. It was a small smile. A tired smile. But it was real. Then I hope this is the beginning of a new chapter for you. A better chapter. Thank you, Your Honor. Court is adjourned. She banged her gavel. The hearing was over. I stood up. My legs were shaking. My hands were shaking. But I was standing. I was walking. I was leaving. I walked out of the courtroom and into the hallway. The doors swung shut behind me. I stood there for a moment, breathing. The air was cool. The hallway was empty. I was alone. I took a deep breath. Then another. And another. My lungs filled with air. They didn't hurt. They didn't burn. They just held the oxygen I needed to live. I had survived. I walked toward the exit. My footsteps echoed on the marble floor. The sun was shining through the windows. The sky was blue. It was the kind of day that made you believe things could get better. I pushed open the doors and stepped outside. The wind was warm on my face. And then I saw them. My colleagues. My friends. A group of people I had worked with for years. People who had seen me struggle. People who had seen me cry. People who had believed me when I told them I was leaving. They were holding flowers. A bouquet of sunflowers. Yellow and bright. Like the sun. One of them stepped forward. Susan. My closest friend. She had been with me through everything. We heard, she said. We were waiting. I smiled. It was a real smile. A genuine, happy smile. Thank you. We're proud of you, Rachel. I looked at them. All of them. Every single person who had shown up to support me. I couldn't have done this without you. We hugged. We cried. We laughed. We stood there on the courthouse steps, in the warm sun, surrounded by flowers and friendship. I looked back at the courthouse. The building where I had spent so many hours fighting for other people's futures. Today, I had fought for my own. And I had won. The courthouse steps were empty now. My colleagues had left. The sunflowers were in my arms, bright and warm against my chest. I stood there for a long moment, looking at the building where my marriage had finally died. It was strange. I had spent so many years afraid of this day. Afraid of standing in front of a judge. Afraid of telling the truth. afraid of what would happen when I finally stopped pretending. But now that it was over, I felt nothing but relief. I got into my car. I drove home. The streets were familiar. The trees were green. The sky was blue. Everything looked the same as it had yesterday. But everything was different. I was different. I pulled into my driveway. I looked at the house. My house. The 2-story brick home I had bought with my own money. The garden I had planted with my own hands. The porch where I had sat on summer evenings, reading books and dreaming about the future. It was mine. It had always been mine. But now it felt like mine in a way it never had before. I walked inside. The house was quiet. The kitchen was clean. The sun was streaming through the windows. I set the sunflowers on the table. I walked through the living room, the dining room, the study. Every room was filled with memories. Some good, some bad. But they were my memories now. Mine alone. I walked to the bedroom. I opened the closet. His clothes were gone. I had packed them up weeks ago. Boxes and boxes of his things. Shirts, suits, shoes, ties. All of it gone. All of it out of my house. Out of my life. I opened the drawer in my nightstand. I pulled out the red notebook. The one I had kept for years. The one where I had written down every cruel word. Every threat. Every moment of fear. I held it in my hands. It was heavy. Heavy with pain. Heavy with years of silence. I walked to the living room. I sat down on the couch. I opened the notebook to the first page. January 15th, 2016. Mark yelled at me tonight. He said I was worthless. He said I was lucky he married me because no one else would. I cried in the bathroom. He didn't notice. I flipped the page. March 22nd, 2017. Mark took $5,000 from our savings without asking. When I confronted him, he told me it was none of my business. He said I was too controlling. He said I needed to learn to trust him. I flipped another page. September 3rd, 2018. Mark threw a glass at me. It hit my arm. I bled. He didn't apologize. He didn't help me. I drove myself to the emergency room. I told the doctor I had tripped. I flipped another page. December 19th, 2019. Mark told me I was impossible to love. He said I was cold. He said I was a workaholic. He said I didn't know how to be a real wife. I believed him. Page after page. Year after year. Entry after entry. Every moment of pain. Every moment of doubt. Every moment I had wanted to leave, but stayed because I was too afraid. I closed the notebook. I held it to my chest. The tears came then. Silent tears that rolled down my cheeks and fell onto the cover. Years of pain. Years of silence. Years of pretending everything was okay. I sat there for a long time. Crying. Mourning. Letting it all out. The woman I used to be. The woman who had believed she wasn't good enough. The woman who had let someone else define her worth. Then I stopped. I wiped my eyes. I stood up. I walked to the kitchen. I found a marker. A thick black marker. I walked back to the living room. I picked up the notebook. I looked at the cover. The name was written in my handwriting. Mark. For letters that had ruled my life for 8 years. I uncapped the marker. I drew a thick black line through his name. I wrote over it. A new word. A new name. A new identity. Me. I held the notebook up. I looked at it. The words stared back at me. Simple. Powerful. True. I walked to the fireplace. I opened the flue. I lit a match. I held it to the corner of the notebook. The flames caught. They spread. The pages curled and blackened. The words disappeared. The years of pain disappeared. I watched it burn until there was nothing left but ash. I walked to the window. I looked out at the garden. The roses were blooming. The lavender was swaying. The grass was green. The sun was warm. Everything was exactly as it should be. I picked up my phone. I opened my contacts. I scrolled to Susan's name. I called her. She answered on the second ring. Rachel? Are you okay? I'm more than okay, I said. I'm free. I'm so proud of you. I know. Thank you for everything. What are you going to do now? I looked out at the garden. The sun was setting. The sky was turning orange and pink. The flowers were swaying in the breeze. I smiled. I'm going to sit in my garden, I said. I'm going to drink tea. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to live my life the way I was always meant to live it. That sounds perfect. It is. It really is. I hung up. I walked to the back door. I opened it. I stepped out into the garden. The grass was soft beneath my feet. The air was warm. The birds were singing. I sat down on the bench under the old oak tree. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. My lungs filled with air. They didn't hurt. They didn't burn. They just held the oxygen I needed to live. For the first time in 8 years, I was completely, utterly free. The garden was quiet. I sat on the bench under the old oak tree, my hands wrapped around a cup of tea. The morning sun was warm on my face. The roses were blooming. The lavender was swaying in the breeze. A bird was singing somewhere in the branches above me. It had been 3 weeks since the hearing. 3 weeks since I had walked out of that courtroom. 3 weeks since I had watched my husband be dragged away by bailiffs. The house felt different now. Lighter. Brighter. The walls didn't feel like they were closing in anymore. The silence didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. It felt like home. It felt like mine. I had spent the first week after the hearing cleaning. Not because the house was dirty. Because I needed to erase the last traces of him. I scrubbed every surface. I washed every curtain. I opened every window and let the fresh air in. I threw away everything he had left behind. Every receipt. Every note. Every piece of mail. Gone. All gone. I had spent the second week redecorating. New pillows. New curtains. New paintings. I painted the guest room a soft lavender. I hung up photographs of my family and my friends. I filled the shelves with books I had been meaning to read. I turned the study into a reading room. A cozy space with a comfortable chair and a lamp and a stack of novels I had been saving for exactly this moment. I had spent the third week thinking. Thinking about the past. Thinking about the future. Thinking about who I was and who I wanted to become. I had made a list. A list of all the things I wanted to do. The places I wanted to go. The experiences I wanted to have. The person I wanted to be. It was a long list. But I had time. All the time in the world. My phone buzzed. Susan. I'm coming over with lunch. Don't argue. I smiled. I won't argue. I'm hungry. Good. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I set down my tea. I walked inside. I looked around the kitchen. The sunflowers were still on the table, bright and yellow and warm. I touched one of the petals. Soft. Fragile. Like me. 20 minutes later, Susan arrived. She was carrying a bag of sandwiches and a bottle of lemonade. She set them on the table. She hugged me tightly. How are you? She asked. I'm good, I said. I'm really good. Really good or divorce good? I laughed. Divorce good is a thing. But I think I'm actually good. The kind of good that doesn't need a qualifier. She smiled. I'm glad. You deserve it. We sat down. We ate. We talked about nothing important. Work. Friends. The weather. It was normal. Ordinary. Perfect. When we finished, Susan looked at me. What are you going to do now? And don't say, sit in my garden. I thought about it. I thought about the list. I thought about the future. I thought about the woman I wanted to become. I'm going to take a vacation, I said. A real vacation. Somewhere I've never been. Somewhere warm. Somewhere with a beach and a pool and no memories. That sounds amazing. It does, doesn't it? I smiled. I've been saving for years. I never spent any money on myself. I always felt guilty. Like I didn't deserve it. But I do. I deserve it. Where are you going? I don't know yet. That's the best part. I can go anywhere. I can do anything. No one is holding me back. No one is telling me I can't. I'm free. Susan reached across the table and took my hand. You are free, Rachel. You're finally free. I nodded. I felt the tears coming. Happy tears. The kind that came from relief and joy and hope. Thank you, I said. For everything. For being there. For believing in me. Always, she said. I'll always be here. We hugged again. Then she left. I stood at the window and watched her car drive away. I looked at the garden. The roses. The lavender. The grass. The bench under the old oak tree. My garden. My home. My sanctuary. I walked to the living room. I opened the drawer where I had kept the red notebook. The one I had burned. The one that had held all the pain and fear and silence. The drawer was empty. I had thrown away the ashes. I had thrown away the memories. I had thrown away the past. But I had kept something else. A small box. A box of things that reminded me of who I was before I met him. Photographs. Letters. A bracelet my grandmother had given me. A book I had loved as a child. A postcard from a trip I had taken when I was 25. A list I had written when I was 19, full of dreams and ambitions and hope. I opened the box. I took out the list. I read it. Travel to Europe. Learn Italian. Write a novel. Paint a picture. Learn to cook. Run a marathon. Fall in love. Be happy. I smiled. I had done some of those things. Not all. Not yet. But I had time. I took out the photograph. Me, standing on a beach in California. I was 23. I was smiling. I was tan. I looked young and happy and full of possibilities. I looked at the photograph for a long time. I remembered that trip. I remembered how excited I had been. I remembered the feeling of the sand between my toes and the salt on my lips. I remembered believing that anything was possible. I wanted to feel that way again. I put the photograph back in the box. I closed the box. I put it on the shelf. I walked to the window. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and pink. The clouds were breaking apart, letting the light through. I thought about the hearing. About the judge. About the letter. About the look on Mark's face when he realized he had lost. I thought about the years of silence. The years of fear. The years of pain. I thought about the woman I used to be. The woman who was afraid to speak. The woman who was afraid to leave. The woman who was afraid to be herself. And I thought about the woman I was now. The woman who had walked into that courtroom and told the truth. The woman who had stood up for herself. The woman who had fought for her own life. I smiled. It was a small smile. A quiet smile. But it was real. I picked up my phone. I opened my contacts. I scrolled to a number I hadn't called in years. A travel agent I had used once, a long time ago. She answered on the third ring. "Good afternoon, this is Patricia." "Patricia," I said. "This is Rachel Miller. I need to book a trip." "Where are you going?" I looked out at the garden. The roses were blooming. The lavender was swaying. The grass was green. The sky was blue. "Somewhere warm," I said. "Somewhere I've never been. Somewhere beautiful." "I can help with that. When do you want to leave?" "As soon as possible." She laughed. "I like your style, Rachel. I'll get back to you within the hour." I hung up. I looked at the garden one more time. The sun was almost gone. The sky was fading to purple. The stars were starting to appear. I walked to the door. I stepped outside. The air was cool. The grass was soft beneath my feet. I walked to the bench under the old oak tree. I sat down. I looked at the sky. I thought about the future. I thought about all the possibilities. I thought about the woman I was going to become. The woman who was brave. The woman who was strong. The woman who didn't need anyone to save her because she had learned how to save herself. I took a deep breath. My lungs filled with air. They were steady. Strong. Free. I smiled. I was ready.